Okay, here's Peter in Ontario, Canada. Great to have you, Peter. How are you doing?
Hey, Rush, always an honor. This is sort of a left-wing, deep state criminal charge thing. Listen, we're very fortunate up here because Truth Radio, you know, yourself, Hannity, Sandy Beach, we get it all in one station kind of thing. So constantly, we've heard all this Strzok stuff. We hear of all this stuff, this corruption that the left has done. I mean, it comes out every day. My question to you is this. So, for instance, the judge that got the application for the FISA warrant, he was probably duped into it, but he was sold. He was sold by Comey. He was sold by Strzok. When is it, like for years and years, the left could do anything they want. They completely got away with everything, Rush. What kind of charge would come out? Like, where would there ever be a charge happening?
Well, a charge for what specifically? I mean, what's
crime? Like an absolute crime. And what would it look like, Rush? Like, what would you think it'd be all, you know, everybody be taken out at once? Is Jeff Sessions been so quiet because he's building files huge and then boom, it's going to happen?
Okay, it's my hearing. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you asking me if they find out that this if the FISA warrant was granted on the basis of this fake dossier, are you asking, would the judge be punished for granting it? Would Comey be punished? Would there be an investigation?
Yes. The long and short, absolutely yes.
Okay. We talked about the judge yesterday, and I don't know. This is the one thing. We haven't yet confirmed that the dossier was indeed used for the FISA warrant, but, man, there are people, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, any number of journalists who have been leading us in this direction for weeks now. And the latest from them is that something on this is going to happen next week. Talked about Andy McCarthy at National Review, who has written about the likelihood of this. But as we sit here today, it's unconfirmed. Nobody knows. Although it can be learned, Donald Trump can find out today if he wants to. He runs the executive branch. Donald Trump may know. He can demand to see the application for the FISA warrant. So he can find out, and then he can act like he doesn't know and continue to pile on these people. He can act confident and assured if he knows that it was used and if it's phony and fake and all this. Or he may not know. I don't know. The judge, that's the question I had yesterday. Did the judge know that the Trump dossier was largely political opposition research, or did they keep that? Did they fool the judge? Did they lie to the judge? If all of this happened, if a phony document that is nothing more than political opposition research bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and her campaign, that was then doctored and made to look like legitimate intelligence gathered by legitimate intelligence agents, that's fraud, among many other things, I would think. That is misrepresentation. That is lying. That is fraud. That is the obtaining of a warrant under false premises. I mean, without being steeped in the legals of this, it would seem to me that massive violations. But here's one other thing to consider. The granting of a FISA warrant requires many people to sign off on it. It's not just James Comey and a couple of investigators that go to the FISA court and present the evidence. There has to be a lot of people, executive-level people at the FBI and anywhere else where there has been participation in the investigation. Those people all have to swear and sign off on the substance of what's being presented to the judge, and it's not a small number of people. A lot of people, particularly from the FBI, because that's DOJ, have to basically confirm and swear that what is in this application is legitimate. So it would seem that many face exposure here. But remember, we're talking about the swamp. and they would cover for each other. Your question about Sessions and would he look into this or is he looking into this? Yeah, those are all good questions, and I wish I could tell you for sure. I wish I could assure you that something like this would indeed be investigated and the perps exposed. Because this, if it happens the way we're laying it out here, if it did happen, this is the biggest scandal by far in our lifetimes. And I'm telling you, it makes Watergate and Nixon look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Nothing compared to this. This is so far wide-ranging and sweeping. You would have a president of the United States. You would have his CIA director. You would have his director of national intelligence. So that would be Obama and James Clapper and John Brennan. And then you would have whoever in the Clinton campaign authorized this or commissioned it. You would have the guy who wrote the Dossier Steele. You'd have Fusion GPS. You would have any number of people at the FBI who would have known what this was and still used it as something that it wasn't. I mean, it's huge what this is, if all of this pans out. And the reason that I think it's going to pan out is because we know the dossier is fake. We know that the Clinton campaign paid for it. We know that it was not the result of the initiative and forward thinking of intelligence agencies. It wasn't the CIA or the NSA or the DIA or the FBI or any of the others sitting around and somebody brought to them a bit of news that made them think, you know what, we better investigate this. This was the Clinton campaign hiring a former Wall Street Journal journalist named Glenn Simpson, who runs a company called Fusion GPS, to create an opposition research document on Donald Trump. Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS then go hire the former MI6 agent Christopher Steele, who then pays the Russians as his sources. We also know that the FBI was going to continue to pay Steele after the dossier had been presented. They were going to continue to pay Steele to continue digging up dirt until that was revealed and went public, at which time they cut him loose. They were all in on using this to get rid of Donald Trump. And if they used this to secure a warrant to spy on the candidacy, the campaign, and the transition, and it was nothing more than typical Clinton war room Oppo research and not legitimate intel. And again, not to be redundant, but we know it wasn't legitimate intel. Whatever was presented to the FISA judge was the result of the Clinton campaign wanting some dirt on Trump and having it created. It was not the result of some informant, that one of the big point, I meant to mention this yesterday. The testimony of this Simpson guy that DiFi released, Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS. She releases all the transcripts, 330 pages of transcripts of his testimony without telling Grassley. The biggest bombshell in it turns out to be not true. The biggest bombshell in the transcript of Glenn Simpson's testimony was the claim that the FBI had a confidential informant in the Trump campaign. Glenn Simpson testified under oath that the FBI had a source within the Trump campaign. This is to take heat off Fusion GPS, by the way. Glenn Simpson said that Christopher Steele, the freelance spy, paid by Fusion GPS to create all of this stuff, the golden showers and all the other things about Trump. Simpson said that Christopher Steele was told by an official of the FBI that they had a confidential informant in the Trump campaign. this, quote, human source from inside the Trump organization was acting in a, quote, voluntary manner. So they tried, Simpson said that somebody in the Trump campaign was ratting them out. It was someone who decided to pick up the phone and report something. Folks, this is key because they're trying to make it look like the dossier was not the first thing that happened, that there was a confidential informant, somebody in the Trump campaign who didn't like him, who thought he was a danger, who was informing the FBI. And then the dossier came. This is to make it look like the dossier had a root of legitimacy to it. And that was the big headline when they went through Simpson's testimony that was released. The problem is, it isn't true. The FBI did not have an informant in the Trump campaign. There was nobody that volunteered from the Trump campaign to call the FBI and dish them dirt. The Washington Post even had a headline, ex-spy behind Trump dossier was told FBI had source inside network. Testimony reveals. It wasn't true. And that was the bombshell from the transcripts that were released yesterday. And again, this is in there. This lie is in there to take the heat off the dossier. This is to make it look like the dossier was written after somebody inside the Trump campaign was dishing dirt to the FBI. Not true. This is the biggest hoax. I can't think of any of them comes close to this.